Hello, my name is Alejandro Rojas, and thank you for joining me. I am a longtime UFO researcher and writer. Of course, now I'm focused more on UAP. What's the difference? Really, not a big one. UFOs was a term made in 1952 by Project Blue Book to say, hey, these are unidentified flying objects. We don't know what they are. We don't know if they're aliens. Over time, people, kind of thought of this topic as researching alien spacecraft. When that isn't the case, that's why we've got this term UAP now that has arisen, which is again saying these are unidentified anomalous phenomena. We don't know what they are, and we're researching them to figure that out. And a lot of research has gone on to figure out what some of these things are. And that's what I'll be reviewing today: Starlink and UAP. So I work for a company called Enigma Labs, where I am a consultant and I look at a lot of the videos. I look for the best ones. And we have gotten a lot of shocking videos. That's what's great about Enigma Labs. It's an app, it's phone based. We're getting more reports than any other organization has ever gotten on a regular basis. And a lot of those are video based, which is even better because in the past we dealt with a lot of just kind of written statements, anecdotal information. But now we're getting videos to look at these things. And we're getting videos from a lot of great people, including pilots. And we're going to go over some of that information because pilots are also mistaking things that are actually Starlink or Starlink related as UAP. So this is also serves as an educational piece for pilots. Let's get into this. This is really interesting. Starlink and UAP, SpaceX spacecraft mistaken for UAP. Most of the videos I'm going to be using in here are ones that we've gotten from the public. And most of these videos, we've gotten not just one, but multiple of these same types. So we're getting a lot of these videos. First of all, why are we getting so many? Starlink satellites. SpaceX is putting thousands and thousands of Starlink satellites in the sky. This is a real picture. If you go to the satellite map.space, you can look at where the SpaceX Starlink satellites are. And this is a real time moving image that you'll see on the website of where they are. And as you can see here, there are a ton of them. As of this video, June 2024, actually, it's already July, so there could be more by now. But there are over 6,000 of these satellites in the sky. That is a lot. And just to show you how it's increased, they started putting these up in 2018. At that time, there were less than 3,000 satellites. You can see here around 2,000 total. So an increase now of over 6,000 is a lot. And I just want to show for perspective this also. So me and my friends, in particular, Ben Hansen, my buddy Mark D'Antonio, UFO researchers also do this. You might see them both on some of the TV shows out there analyzing UFOs. But we'll do these sky watches where we take these night vision tubes and we point them at the sky at night and we kind of look at stuff and kind of describe to people what they see. Usually when we do these sky watches in the past, we'll at least get a couple satellites within the hour that we do them. Not a bunch, but things have changed a ton. So in early July, Ben Hansen and myself were doing one of these sky watches in Roswell. So let's take a look at this video. So here we go. In the upper right, you see a couple there. They're crisscrossing. In a second here, you'll see another one coming into frame. There's that. You can see how fast, some of them move. And it used to be, what you just saw was rare to see two at the same time crossing like that. That wasn't common. Here you see one in the middle. You see another one now to the right. Here's another one coming in on the bottom. Those two cross. As we pan over, you'll see another couple coming in. So, this is within maybe 30 minutes, these videos, and we're seeing tons of them and not just one or two. We're seeing multiples on the screen at the same time. There's one in the middle there. Really weird. just to see so many of these. And you can imagine how, people who are unfamiliar with how many satellites are up there now being like, "Oh my gosh, that's got to be some kind of alien battle going on with these UFOs fighting each other." And there are people out there saying that that sort of thing is going on. Look at this one. There's three right there in the center. Because of this happening, because there's so many of them up there. But it's not a space battle. As you saw in the image before, there are just thousands and thousands of these SpaceX satellites, these Starlink satellites covering the world. Now you may be like, that's very frustrating. Why is this going on? Well, the positive is that now, because of the Starlink, you can get fast internet practically anywhere in the world. If you're a farmer in rural America in the middle of nowhere, you can purchase a satellite, receiver from SpaceX and get great internet because of all these satellites. So, there's a give and take for that. So pretty incredible how many satellites are up there. Of course, you can imagine we get quite a few videos of just what appear to be satellites. But that's not just what we're getting. We're getting actual videos from launch to beyond. So, in other words, it's not just satellites mistaken for UAP when it comes to SpaceX. The rocket launches themselves and the different parts of the launch and the deployment of these satellites are also causing some confusion. This graphic here just shows what happened. So with SpaceX, what's unique is that the rocket takes off. There are two stages. The first stage is the main rocket that gets it into orbit. And that rocket, famously, as you can see here, will reconfigure itself and come back and land within minutes of launching. Typically, these land in the Pacific Ocean on an unmanned platform. So these kind of robotic boats that are in the Gulf of Mexico that these things land onto. Incredible technology. And that allows these rockets to be used over and over again. That's what makes these launches cheap, and it's the secret of SpaceX's success. But as you can see here, there's more that goes on. The second stage has a fairing, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But it's kind of a covering for protection of the satellite deployment section. You'll see that fairing then breaks off, and sometimes they recover it, sometimes not, but it falls into the atmosphere. And then the payload is also then separated and deployed. And there's more that goes on that I'll cover in just a second. All right, now we're going to look at some video. So I'm going to full screen this. Here we go. So this is the first, the rocket launches themselves. We're getting a lot of these. Now, a lot of people realize that these are rocket launches, but not everybody. Some people are still, I recently saw one very similar to this taken from a pilot in flight. And he was saying, me and my buddies, we didn't know what that was. And one of my buddies was saying, hey, that's a rocket. And I was like, I don't know, dude. But these are rocket launches and they look extraordinary. A lot of times people call them like a jellyfish UFO or something like that. But that's a SpaceX rocket taking off. This is out of Vandenberg Space Force Station in California. They also launch out of Texas at the SpaceX facility and out of Florida at Cape Canaveral. This one was June 18th, 2024 at 8:40 p.m. You'll notice on the bottom left, this is a video that we received on the app. It is Enigma sighting number 294750 out of Garden Grove, California. Also June 18th, they said they got it at 9:30, but remember, the witness is putting these in the time usually themselves, so they don't have the exact time. They're just like, I think that was around 9:30, probably a little bit earlier because the launches don't last long. You actually don't see this giant cloud for too long. After it's gone, it does sit there for a while, but it does dissipate. But what's extraordinary about these launches is that how far you can see them. This is Superstition's Mountain outside of Arizona. It's just east of Phoenix. And I got this video myself on March 18th, 2024. But look at that, all the way in Arizona. It's that huge in the sky. So from what I understand, there's a type of ash in the fuel that SpaceX uses that is highly reflective. And that's why you see this extraordinary kind of event here. Also, a lot of these launches are later in the day. And so, again, for that reason, well, because they're just after sunset, that there's still some sun. Even here, you can see the sun isn't completely The light from the sun isn't completely gone in the sky, so that just reflects even further. But you'll see it there fading out just after a few minutes. So they don't last too long, but pretty dang incredible. That's the rocket launch. So we get a lot of those. But we get a lot of these too. This is a train. So when the satellites are deployed from the rocket, from the second stage part of the rocket, they are in a close configuration like this. They're very compact and close to each other, and they begin to spread over time. I'll play this video, but you can see how strange they look in the sky. This looks like some kind of objects going up in the sky. What the heck is that? You can imagine why that would freak some people out, especially people that are not familiar with SpaceX and Starlink satellites. So you can see that the satellite train there, pretty spectacular looking. This is Enigma number 291275. Easton, Connecticut on September 16th, 2023 at 9:30 p.m. So that's a good one. The next one, you can see it is another satellite train. There's one after another behind each other. But actually, the reason I'm showing the next one is for the audio. The audio is great. The witness is obviously very frustrated. They're like, look, I'm seeing these UFOs and you guys are telling me they're satellites. How can they be satellites? And there are times where we'll tell people, look, that was actually SpaceX Starlink satellites. And they're like, no, it wasn't. And you can kind of hear that sentiment in the next video, but a little bit of comic relief, this one.
So, I don't care what anybody says. This cannot be a fucking satellite. It's Starlink. Ridiculous, bro. Still think I'm crazy, people? What is that you say? It's a satellite. I don't ever remember satellites doing this.
Oh my god. Aren't you happy?
Do 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 do. Weird. I swear to all that is holy that there's some things going on in this world that we do not understand. We may never understand, but we are not alone. Welcome to Ancient Aliens.
So funny. Very, very funny. This is Enigma number 290701 out of Tuckerton, New Jersey on March 25th, as you can see, 2024, at 8:23 p.m. So those are the Starlink. Very weird, definitely confusing people, and some people are convinced it is aliens. But it's not. Here's one that I was confused about, because it's not just satellites that are being mistaken for UAP. It's actually other parts. And in fact, there was an article in the Daily Mail about a bunch of sightings on May 2nd in the Southwest. We were getting reports from California, Arizona, Utah, and Nevada, all of which, many of which actually, that had videos. And the videos were pretty extraordinary. The Daily Mail covered this. It went a bit viral, but this is what most of the videos look like. So you had in the bottom right here in Orville, California at about 9 p.m. They were all about a little after 9 p.m., this kind of glob. And then you have what I call the bow tie on the left in Palm Springs. And, these videos, usually you see the object cruising across the sky looking like what you see here. And then often they'll fade out, which is pretty extraordinary looking. So what the heck could that be? At first, I wasn't sure. In that article, I say, I think this has something to do with SpaceX, but I'm not sure. And it turned out that it was. Just for review and to kind of explain this, here's what the Falcon 9 rocket looks like in the different parts of it. On the right, that's the same thing, just without the skin on it. So you can see what's under the skin there. But the first part on the bottom, as we talked about, is the first stage. So this is the rocket that gets it into the orbit. This part in the middle is an interstage. And what that is kind of a fairing, but it also has some directional flaps that help this first stage when it's landing. So it stays on there. But boom, it pushes out this second stage so it can go complete its mission. And it's carrying the payload, and the payload is underneath this fairing here. So this nose cone is what's called a fairing. It's really a cover that is providing aerodynamics for the launch, but also can be removed because it's protecting the cargo. And in this image, you can see a bus just to show, that's the size of the cargo that it can hold, a pretty large cargo. This is what the second stage looks like. This is from the SpaceX website. And just so you know, like it says here, they may deploy twice. And so they may have two different payloads, and the rocket may boot up. So it may turn on its rocket in order to get in a different orbit in order to deploy the second payload. And then it's doing more than that. So reentry and passivation. So this is a video from Animations Explained, great video you can find on YouTube, which shows what the second stage is doing. So after it deploys the satellites, it'll do this maneuver. It'll turn around and it'll turn on the rocket. And the reason being that it is positioning itself and slowing itself down so it can fall into the ocean like you see here. It's for safety reasons. They don't want this because it is going to go through the atmosphere and break up. Not all of it's going to break up, but they don't want pieces and parts falling on people's homes like it's been happening in China lately. They want this to safely fall into the ocean. The other thing that it'll do that NASA requires is something called passivation, which means all of its fuel has to be emptied. So its fuel tanks have to be completely emptied. Why is that? Well, while it's in orbit, they don't want it exploding, which would create a lot of debris in that orbit, which would be a danger to the other satellites out there, danger to astronauts and the ISS. So you've got to get all of the fuel out of it. So for safety reasons, it's got to do this maneuvering in order to get itself deployed in the right place so it falls into the ocean and that it's empty of fuel. So that is what's causing these incredible videos. And this is one of my favorite. So we're getting a bunch of these. This is one of the best where it just looks absolutely extraordinary. You can see here, it's like a spaceship shooting some kind of shield. It's absolutely incredible. This is actually one of the re-entry burns. This one was Odessa, Texas on March 4th. Another Enigma Labs. The SpaceX launch was actually out of Cape Canaveral in Florida. But check out what this looks like. Boom. So you're seeing this blob with a light in the middle going across the sky. So you're already like, what the heck is that? And then you see this burst coming out of it. And you can actually see the object still has flames coming out of it. The phone is actually turning there, not the object. You can see that the person turned the phone probably because they wanted to get it into the landscape, but you can't really do that, people. If you're filming vertically, keep it vertical. You can't change. Oh, you know what? I should film this horizontal because it's going to do this. It's going to look weird and it's not going to be good for the video. But the blob part is when it was maneuvering. So when it puts on its thrusters, it's pushing out gas. That's how it moves itself. That gas then follows the spacecraft as it's cruising along. And then that burst is when it turns on the rocket engine in order to slow down. And watch this one more time. Boom. Isn't that extraordinary? So, you can only imagine how people are confused and think, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? We're getting a lot of these. These are some of my favorites. This is at launch. This is how I can tell. You can go to a website called flightclub.io, and it will show you the path of the spacecraft, and in this case, the SpaceX. The darker or the red area here is the first stage. So the first stage doesn't go too far. It gets it into orbit, and then it falls back, and it lands on the drone ships from SpaceX. But the rest, the second stage, goes around the planet. This is, a complete orbit. It takes about 90 minutes for it to do that. So if you do the math, with the timing, it was about an hour or so later that, it was over the Southwest United States when people were seeing all of this. The other is the bow tie. So the passivation part, I believe, I can't say to be honest with 100% certainty. I've reviewed like a lot of documents from SpaceX. I've talked to a few people who are familiar, but no one can confirm this with me. And so hopefully I can get this confirmation soon. But I think it's pretty apparent that the outgassing part, there's two ports on each side where they're emptying all of the gas out of the second stage in order to make it safe. That's the process of passivation. And that's what we're seeing here. This video is from Palm Springs, California on May 2nd, but again, out of Cape Canaveral. You can see what that looks like. So it looks really weird, right? What the heck is that flying through the sky? Again, yeah, same picture. You could see it was right over that area at that time. So this is a bow tie and a satellite train, and this is one of my favorite videos. I think this one's really important. Let's play it here, but it's got both phenomena. You can see a satellite train above it, and then you can see below the bow tie effect where it is out, you putting that gas out, which is what it does right after it drops off the satellites. This is a really important video for a few reasons. So this one was captured in Sicily, actually in Italy, on June 23rd, after a launch out of Cape Canaveral, Florida. And the reason this is important, and I'm going to wait for this to restart again, is that you have the bow tie and you have the satellite train, but look at the satellite train above. It doesn't look like several separate objects. In fact, I've got a close up. So here again, I went to Flight Club just to see where the path of that spacecraft was. And sure enough, it went right over Italy at that time. But if we look at this close up video, that looks like one solid object, right? That doesn't look like 20 separate satellites, but it is 20 separate satellites. It looks like this luminous tube is what I call it, where some people have been calling it a cigar-shaped UFO or a luminous UFO. It looks like that because remember, these things are not self-luminous, they're reflecting light. And what happens is in whatever the camera system is, it's taking in that light and it's kind of blowing it up. You can do this with your cell phone. Go outside and take an image of, let's say a plane or some point of light, and it's going to look bigger in your phone than it does to your eye because the camera is just, especially if it's a light sensitive setting where the aperture is open more, it's going to kind of make it look bigger. So all of those blend together to make it look like one object. And we've been getting quite a few of these sightings as well. And that's why this is important, because there has been a lot of argument that, oh my gosh, there's all these cigar UFOs being videotaped by pilots and by others. But no, they're satellite trains. And let's look at some of these videos. So this is one that I found very mysterious. If you follow my show, I was, really curious about this sighting, and this one's out of Montana. I call this one a luminous tube. This one's out of Belgrade, Montana, June 5th, 2024, Enigma 294125. And so in this sighting, let's check it out. It's an extraordinary video. I mean, you have this object moving across the sky, very high, obviously above the clouds, because, it passes above the cloud there. So what is that? This was taken with a psionics camera, according to the witness. I actually have one of these now, and my buddy Ben Hansen, is a dealer for them, but you can get them on Amazon as well. I'll put a link in the show notes. But what's cool about this video is that, it looks like one solid luminous object. How could that be a satellite train? Well, the psionics camera is a light intensifier camera. So it's not a traditional sort of night vision camera, even though night vision would also probably do this. But it's intensifying light, so it's somewhat distorting what the light looks like. It's making the light brighter than it actually is. So in this case, it's taking these little satellites, making them really bright, and so they look like one object when they're not. If you had a more high-tech system, if you had a zoom lens, which all of which would be really difficult, you would be able to maybe distinguish the different satellites. Also, it's probably was just deployed recently, so the satellites are really close to each other. But this one turned out to be Starlink. Now, this is an analysis of those Starlink satellites by an organization, because really part of the problem is nobody's really paying attention to this stuff. Is it that important? I think it is, especially for the stuff that we're doing where we're trying to identify UAP. But more importantly, it should be important to the FAA and to NASA, both of whom are responsible for air safety. And we have pilots reporting these things. Here is a symposium on commercial space and astronomy partnering. This is actually from a presentation called Spatial Situational Awareness. And in this presentation, you can see that they took their own photograph with a regular camera, a Canon SLR camera, no telescope attached to it, but you can get, what you see at the top there, the satellites. And they look almost like, at least portions of it look like one solid object, even during the day. But on the bottom there, you can see what is actually the satellites, how it was multiple different satellites. Although what's great in the bottom image is that each satellite is depicted by a circle, but that the satellites are so close to each other that the circles overlap. And that's very representative of what these cameras are doing and why they look like one solid cigar shape when they're not. There has been some more science done on this. So this is an important sighting where this was kind of proven out. This was a case out of Hawaii. This is MUFON case 124-190, the Mutual UFO Network. It was captured August 10th, 2022. And here's the case summary. There were 5 airline pilots among 2 commercial airliners that saw a huge UFO cross the sky. There were 5 airline pilots, including 1 ex-military, who saw a bunch of lights moving over 15 Gs, calibrate, and then fly. So I'm not totally sure what they mean by that. We figure it was a mile long and same altitude, approximately 37,000 feet. It was about a mile long. So they're saying they think it was a mile long, and at the same altitude they were at, which was 37,000 feet. We were 3 hours northeast of Hawaii, en route from OGG, which is the airport in Maui, Hawaii, to YVR, Vancouver, Canada. A scientist took a look at this, kind of agreed with them about their figures. And remember, these figures like 15 Gs and 37,000 feet, these are estimates based off of their observation. They don't know for sure how high or how far away these objects are, which is really important because that's how you estimate speed is, distance will let you know how far something is moving in the period of time that you're watching it, so you can determine speed. So a paper came out where the guy was like, look, this is something anomalous, this huge mile-long cylindrical type UFO. This is, evidence of something anomalous. Well, some researchers then said, I think you got that wrong. I think this is a Starlink train. They re-examined it, and a paper came out and was accepted by the International Academy of Astronautics. It was a symposium on spatial situational awareness, just like that other one that we were looking at. This topic of this paper was enhancing space situational awareness to mitigate risk, a single case study in the misidentification of a recently launched Starlink satellite train as UAP in commercial aviation. I've recently interviewed Doug Mittner, one of the primary authors of this paper, on my Open Mind UFO News. I also got to interview Dr. Richard Griffiths with the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. And there's another couple of gentlemen, Nick Snell and John Stiley, hopefully I said his name right, who wrote this paper. But they determined it was Starlink. They were able to find the exact satellites, and this is all in their paper. Here is a video that was submitted by the witnesses. Looks like a big cylinder, right? Similar to some of the other videos that we've looked at. Here again, they changed from vertical to landscape. Don't do that, people. Keep it. If you're committed, if you're on vertical, commit to vertical. If you want to change the landscape, turn off your camera, put it in landscape, and then start recording again. Here are pictures that were taken. This was an iPhone 12 on, I believe, the video as well, and same with these pictures that were taken. Here are close-ups. So these close-ups look very much like a cylinder, one long object. You can't tell in any of these photos or videos that these are multiple objects. Also, the distance is very important. They thought this was at 37,000 feet, which is about what their elevation was in their commercial aircraft, when actually Starlink are at 200 to 300 and something miles away. So this was 200, 300 miles in the sky. So this was a lot further away than they suspected. So probably even a lot bigger than they suspected, but it's just a train. What you see here too on the left is important on this, because what they're doing is determining the degrees in the image that the object takes up. Why is that important? Because essentially this is like a slice of pie. And this shows you how big that slice of pie is. But you don't know how big the object is, because the other portion you need is the distance. The closer the distance, of course, if you're going out on that slice of pie, then the smaller the object. But the further the distance, then the larger the object. And this is something researchers use to determine size. So that was a really important case. And why do they look so luminous? This is a great graphic. And in this graphic, what it's showing is the airliner in the part of the planet that is completely dark, in the night. Whereas you see the objects themselves might be more in the twilight area, or definitely closer to the sunlight. But either way, it shows how even though the airliner is nowhere near where the sun can get to it, so it's dark where the pilots are seeing this, the sun is still able to hit the straight on the satellites, which gives them a huge, lot of reflection. So they're going to look very bright. And that's why they're going to look so strange in the sky to people. And that's for all satellites. And the other thing is there's terrain. So let's say, I used to live in Denver. You've got mountains here on the planet. Then, that's going to break up the light. And you may then see the satellite changing in luminosity or disappearing because it's moving into shadows. It's not, getting hit by the sunlight. So that's why satellites look so strange. Red Rock. So this is a recent case. And I believe, we've got a video of this case, and I've sent it out to the media, but for some reason they're not paying attention. But I think this pretty solidly demonstrates that this case, that if you follow this kind of stuff in the news, was most likely also a Starlink train, similar to what we've just been reviewing. So all kinds of articles were going out in the last couple of weeks about Red Rock's UFO. Workers say a strange object hovered over a Colorado concert venue. These articles were going out early in July. The object was seen at 1 a.m. on June 5th. The witnesses described it as a large disc-shaped craft. They said there were 3 levels of windows. They also said then it started fading away until it was invisible. It didn't shoot off into the distance. It simply dissolved into the ether. We all watched it vanish. This doesn't surprise me. A lot of people are telling me, well, they said it was disc shaped, or they said there was 3 levels of windows. Well, I have been involved with a lot of UFO reports, and there are a lot of times where you just follow the data, a video or a picture shows up, and you see how, there was a lot of inference. There's a lot of assumptions that witnesses were making about what they saw. They did say they only saw this for a few seconds. So, in their defense, they were just making a lot of assumptions based off of what they were seeing for a few seconds. So this is someone in Lakewood, Colorado, and I'll show you the relation of where it is. But Lakewood is essentially the closest city to Red Rock's amphitheater. I know this intimately because I went to high school in Lakewood, Colorado. Actually, when I was going to high school, I lived in Lakewood, Colorado. I was going to Wheat Ridge High School, which is in the neighboring town, just north of here. But I would ride my bike out to Red Rocks and the Golden in that area all of the time. I love to ride my bike all the time. So I was very familiar with this area. Also, I love Red Rocks. It's like my absolute favorite concert venue. So I've seen a ton of concerts there. It's been a big part of my life. But anyway, I went and looked at our videos, and sure enough, we had a couple reports and a video from that exact same time, June 5th, 2024, 1 a.m. in Lakewood. So just down the street from Red Rocks. It's about 10 miles away where this witness was. And I'll show you the relation here soon. But you see, there is a reflection that there are some moving lights in front of another light in the background. And those moving lights, you can tell, are a reflection off of a window. So he's probably filming out of his window. The reason the lights are moving is because his hand's moving. And this is an important note. When someone is holding their phone, it's absolutely impossible to remain perfectly still. The camera is always going to pick up on your slight hand movements. Some people will tell me, well, I was leaning against the pool and I was holding it really still. It's impossible for the human body to hold that phone perfectly still. That's why you need a tripod. Is the best thing if you're getting videos. But you can tell the object in the background, which is most interesting, is what we're looking at is not jiggling. That is something that is actually there in the sky. And what does it look like? It looks like a luminous cigar, a luminous kind of tube of light, I call it, or a luminous cigar shape in the sky. And what does it do? It kind of moves along and then fades out, exactly like the witnesses described. So let's take a look here. Here is a map. You can see where the witness was, the yellow star, more in central Denver. It's more in town, a little bit east of where I essentially grew up. And then you can see Red Rocks out there by Mount Morrison, and it's not that far away. So, I mean, what are the chances you've got this guy filming this Starlink satellite train that is highly luminous that everybody practically mistakes, even airline pilots are mistaking for a UFO. And then these other Red Rocks guys seeing something completely different at the exact same time. The chances, in my experience, are near zero. I'm sure this is the same object. Here's a close up of that video where you can see, look at that. I mean, I don't blame the people. That looks extraordinary. What the heck? This huge, luminous line. That's crazy, right? And then you see it fade out, just like they said, it slowly faded out. So it fits the description very well. Does it have 3 levels and a disc? Maybe if I was sitting there for a while, working all night. I mean, it was 1 a.m., people. But, they just made some assumptions about what they were seeing. I think that it's highly, highly likely this is what they saw at Red Rocks. The same Starlink train phenomena. But moving on, pilots, there's another phenomena that, my friend and researcher Ben Hansen and I have done a couple videos, maybe you saw them, maybe you didn't, of what was called racetrack UFOs. So we had a lot of pilots in flight reporting these racetrack UFOs. And let's take a look here. Here's a couple videos. One has some audio. Of course, this one has just the plane sounds in the background, but the next one will have the pilots actually conversing about it. But there you go. You see the light up, and then it fades out. And then behind it, another one. This was called racetrack UFO phenomena because they were assuming these lights were going in a circle. Because that's what it looks like, right? That it lights up, you see it, and then as it's going through its circle, goes further away and fades out, and then comes back and lights up again. They thought these were objects that were moving in a circular kind of racetrack pattern. But in actuality, what it looks like they are is a train of satellites where you're just seeing one at a time fade in and fade out. So it's just hitting the sun just right where you can see them when they're in this certain area, and then they go out into shadow, and you don't see it anymore. And this is happening a lot. Pilots are seeing this quite a bit, but it's been well established. These are satellites. Here we go. Here's another one.
Okay, there it is. And there, barely see it. Oh, dang it, went away.
It's 320 at 20 degrees north of the horizon, and it's probably
There it is.
it's either the SpaceX satellites or maybe it's the Perseus. There's a Perseus meteor tower this week.
It's not a satellite and it's not a meteor. No, they
Yeah,
are.
these things are not moving like meteors. They're looks like they're orbiting every now and then and changing direction. We curve.
So there you go. All these pilots are looking at this thinking, what the heck is this? We don't know. And in fact, there were some news stories about this phenomena before it was discovered that they were Starlink. And some of those pilots got a little embarrassed. They were like, well, I went out to the public and said, look, we're seeing something weird. And then it turned out it's not that weird. But that's okay. No one should get embarrassed by that, because what they've done is extremely helpful. Now we can alert other pilots and other people to what's going on. I think the sad part is that who should be responsible for alerting pilots? The FAA. And NASA holds that responsibility too, but nobody is looking at this stuff. The FAA has no procedure for reporting UAP at this time. In a NASA panel, they told NASA, oh, well, the air traffic controllers have a protocol where they submit it to a database, although I'm not sure where that information goes. When asked, well, what about pilots? What is their procedure to report? And the FAA guy said, I don't know. I've looked it up, and it essentially says, go to a third party civilian organization that's going to put it in their Excel spreadsheet, and it'll go nowhere. So they're not taking this seriously, and they're not looking at these cases. And so pilots are left with not knowing what to do. Some pilots are reporting them as drones to the drone database. Some pilots are using another database called the Air Safety something or other, the ASRS. It is something that's administered by NASA, and they officially aren't being requested to put UAP information in there. It's for air safety issues, but UAP, something you see something you don't identify, that is an air safety issue. I think NASA's really got to kind of go in there and do some investigation of those cases. That would be nice. And in NASA's report, where they put together a panel to recommend what to do about UAP, they did suggest that. They said we should use this ASRS system to help pilots to report there, and then create a group in NASA where they go in and publicly, transparently review that information. So they're not doing it. So who's doing it? Enigma Labs. It's us. It's me. It's the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. It's Ryan Graves and his group called the Americans for Safe Aerospace. They're looking at these cases. And it's my buddy Ben Hansen, who's doing probably the most of this work. He's really responsible for helping figure out this racetrack stuff and take a lot of these reports, but he's doing it all by himself. So we really need systems in place to take this stuff seriously and figure it out. So here we go. Here are the different types of things that are being mistaken for UAP related to Starlink. You have the jellyfish there in that image, when the rocket is launching, and you see this weird thing in the sky. A lot of people seeing that because it's so extraordinary. Then the satellites themselves, the satellite trains. We're getting a lot of those. And here's an image I'm showing here where you just see, a line of dots. That is the satellites all in a row. Usually, the closer they are, the more recently they've been deployed. The bursts, when the jets light up to slow down and to position the second stage to come back in to break up in the atmosphere and safely land in the ocean. Those bursts, those are probably my favorites. Those are so incredible looking. The blob, which is just, the gas flying along with the spacecraft, you see that most common because that isn't just specific to SpaceX. You actually see that with other like military rocket launches as well. The bow tie, which is the passivation, I believe, to be honest, I haven't 100% confirm that, but when the gases are pushed out on the sides, and we've got that great video where you see the bow tie along with the satellites that had just been deployed. And then finally, these luminous tubes, or these large luminous cigar shapes that are often seen by pilots, where we actually have a scientific research paper on these now, where it's been confirmed, those are actually the Starlinks being mistaken. And the racetrack UFOs. So when I've got the video running of that, where you see a light up, then fade out, a light up here in the video. In fact, right now you see a second one. So sometimes you will see 2 or 3 of these lights that light up and then fade out, light up and fade out. So they look like they're going in a circle when actually there's just a long line of them, one at a time, lighting up and fading out in an area where the sun is reflecting on them. So these are the many faces of Starlink. I hope you found this really educational and interesting. There really aren't a lot of places that are reviewing this information. That's why I felt that compelled to do this research and to get this information out, because I think it's really important that the public know what Starlink and SpaceX spacecraft look like. And I think it's really important that pilots are informed. I think it's kind of tragic that at this point, when NASA and the Pentagon have said this is such an important issue, that really pilots aren't being informed, and there isn't an organized way where the FAA or some other responsible agency like NASA are gathering this information and getting it to pilots. At the same time, I know these are organizations that are tasked to do a lot of stuff with very little resources. I know FAA is a very busy organization, and I think it's not just their fault. They need to be tasked. Congress has to, and others. They have to make money available, and they got to ask, okay, we're going to give you this money now. Create this department, and let's get this done. So it's a coordinated effort that has to happen, and there are organizations like I mentioned, Americans for Safe Aerospace. There's organizations like or individuals such as myself. I recently did a talk at the EAA, which is the largest air show and kind of aircraft enthusiast and pilot event, where I did a talk to kind of inform people of all these nuances and what's going on. But we really need some official stuff going on with this. So to end this, I just also want to tell you, this is where I got most of these videos, from the Enigma Labs app. Now, it only works on iOS for Apple right now. So if you've got an Apple phone, go download it. It's free. We're working very quickly on getting it running in Android as well. I'm hoping by the end of the year. We'll have it on Android, but you can submit sightings at enigmalabs.io as well. And if you look in the Explore section of enigmalabs.io, you'll be able to look at some statistics and some sightings around the world. We also have our library there where you can read about really important cases, historic cases. So check that out. Also, the app is really cool. Some of the features that I'm showing you here is on the left-hand side. What you see there is the content feed, where we put all of our best videos. So you can just look at all of the videos there. They're really cool. In the middle, we also have what is called the Identify camera. So we have a camera, 2 of them. There's a record camera where you can record a sighting if you're having one, and you can see all the telemetry that's coming in from your camera, like, your altitude, the angle that your phone is at, the direction your phone is facing, all really important data for researchers. And then if you hit the Identify tab, you'll see what you're seeing here in this image. You'll see a lot of dots show up. And then if you hover over those dots with the little X in the middle, it'll show you what it is. So it'll say, oh, this is an aircraft. This is airplane such and such, or this is a satellite, or this is Saturn or Venus. So it'll let you know, oh, okay, that's Venus. No wonder why I see this bright thing in the sky at this time of day, this time of year, so you can be educated on what's up there. And we're improving that all of the time. It's not going to have all of the SpaceX satellites because we're relying on other databases. And there are so many SpaceX satellites going up that it takes some time for these databases to update. And then finally, when you open up the app, it's going to zoom in on this picture of the planet into where you are, and you'll be able to see all the sightings in your area, or go around the planet and look at anywhere different sightings that have been reported. So it's a very cool app. Check it out. We're getting tons of videos, and that's how I was able to put together this presentation and show you guys what we're getting that is actually Starlink and SpaceX. So I hope you really enjoyed this. Check out the description for links on some of the stuff that we talked about. And thank you very much for joining me.